If I said that endings aren't really endings, but beginnings, would you hold it against me? The last 7 years of your life have been preparing you for what's next to come. And today I'm sharing personal stories from my own preparation, including a very spontaneous West Coast road trip with near strangers that I quit my actual job to go on. The weird medicine of living in an intentional yoga community in California for a year, and how 7 year cycles of time shape us according to astrology. What is up, my witches? Welcome to the Queer Soul Alchemy podcast, where we help queer folks connect with supportive community, embrace their authentic selves, and explore spirituality, yoga, and astrology. I'm your host, Lee Davey. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host and favorite queer NB priestess, Lee Davey, your humble soul shepherd, your inner alchemy doula, your dad on vacation. If your dad was a gay witch in a bucket hat, making sure that everybody hydrates before and after yoga class, and also reminding you to apply sunscreen for the 75th time today. In this episode, we're diving deep into my personal lore, my experience of living at the Madonna Yoga Retreat Center in Santa Cruz, California for a year, the spontaneous decision to leave from there, and the various epic West Coast adventures that ensued, and this larger 7 year cycle that's been ending. Not just for me, but maybe for you too, and for the collective. But first, new episodes of this podcast drop every Thursday, posted to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Wherever you're listening from, please help me stay sane and feel like I'm not just screaming into the vast and lawless black hole of the interweb by leaving me a like, a comment, and a nice little 5-star review. And make sure you subscribe, honey, so that you can see more of me and I can see more of you. Don't miss out on exclusive access to my free self-care resource guide, which I've specifically curated just for you to support your journey with spirituality. To download this guide and receive exclusive insights directly into your email inbox, please sign up for my email newsletter on my website at youareloved.one/pod. And what do you guys want to hear about next? Email me anytime at paisleyparvatidavy@gmail.com. Tell me your story and I'll share it with your consent, because sharing our stories makes us stronger together. Today's share comes from listener Gloria, who tried out the ritual challenge that I offered you guys on the last episode, and here's what she had to say about it. I made an altar for Mabon using your suggestions from the last episode of your podcast. Gloria said, I really liked your suggestion of incorporating symbols of light and dark to represent the equinox. My Christian upbringing makes me think of light and dark representing good, in quotes, and evil, in quotes. But as a witch, I know those aren't real opposing forces in nature. My Scully and Cthulhu figures honor both ideas of light and dark. They're both powerful science fiction characters that I love. Agent Scully from the X-Files was a scientist and investigator. She relied on logic and practicality to reveal the truth and bring good and light into the world. Big Virgo energy, I thought. Nice, Gloria. And Cthulhu, as originally described by author H.P. Lovecraft, is a giant, ancient alien monster who sleeps in the depths of the ocean, waiting for his time to emerge and bring chaos and darkness into the world. I assembled the altar thinking about the transition between light and dark, the shifting of the season from being outdoors and active into a time that will be more introspective, spiritual, and supernatural. I added the green and orange stones for colors of the turning leaves, a maple leaf from my yard, and my jack-o'-lantern necklace. And then she said, I struggle with seasonal depression, so the changing seasons can be scary for me, but I'm hoping that honoring this natural change through my practice of witchcraft will help me shed those ideas of light equals good and dark equals bad. Those ideas to me are just as fictional as the characters. Thank you so much for sharing that, Gloria. I absolutely love the picture of the altar that you sent. You guys, this altar is beautiful, simple, and so meaningful. In honor of the autumn equinox, we can create an altar to represent both the light and the darkness within our lives and to honor both of those, because just as the day and the night are equal, and that makes the autumn equinox a very magical day, the darkness and the light within us are of equal importance. As Gloria mentioned, that conditioning can be very, very difficult to break away from. And I was not raised with any religion. However, I still had a lot of religiousness, specifically Christianity, around me for my whole upbringing. And so even though I do feel like I luckily escaped a lot of religious trauma, I still personally feel like I'm also working through generational religious trauma and just collective religious trauma. And there can be shame around identifying as a witch, right? Because the Christian narrative of witches has been to label them as solely bad. And ultimately, witches and witchcraft have been very misunderstood. So when we step onto this path of mindfulness and spirituality that is not antithetical to mainstream religion, but just simply another path or another way to lead to the same place. But it is perceived as being wrong or labeled as evil. It can be really hard to separate out that projection and not take that to heart, right? However, part of our practice is acknowledging that even those who may shame us or may not understand or just push us into a box, part of our practice is to see that and to still hold that in the light of love and understand that it is still two halves of the whole. And that is just the nature of the world that we're living in. I didn't say that it's perfect by any means. I didn't say that it makes sense even, but in its own way, there is a divine reasoning for it, right? And we're here on this earth school, this soul school of earth in order to learn, right? And to experience. And so we have to have problems and conflict and challenges and difficulties to overcome in order to learn, in order for our souls to evolve. So all right, moving into our queer story time for this episode. You guys, we are diving deep into my personal lore, the lore of baby gay Lee Davy from the time period of my life where I was 21 to 23 years old. First stepping out, my personal journey, really getting it seriously into yoga, spirituality, really getting serious about walking the yogic path, but not sure how to do that as a queer person. So we have to go all the way back to the beginning of this cycle. So 7 years ago, going all the way back to 2017, y'all, that right at the end of 2017, do you remember we had a total solar eclipse? It was visible in the United States. The closest it got to Ohio was, I believe, Tennessee, Nashville area. But it was visible in the United States in, I believe it was August of 2017. So we had a total solar eclipse. Around December 2017 is when I graduated from Kent State University. I also, at the same time, graduated from my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And that is also how I met my teacher, Swami Shankarananda. Fast forward about 6 months after that, March 2018, I'm a free bird, have graduated, and sold all my stuff. The world is my oyster, right? I've packed everything up. This was before I had my cats. I didn't have any leases or car payments or anything. And I packed everything I owned into one backpack, one small suitcase, and my yoga mat, and went to California 6 months after what I perceive to be as the astrological beginning of this 7-year cycle. And I'll talk about that later on in this episode. I graduated from college by the skin of my teeth, you guys. I tried to drop out like 3 different times. I changed my major 3 different times. Essentially, I just did not like the bureaucracy of higher education. And although I love learning and there were certain classes that I really loved, I was going to business school, right? So it just didn't resonate with my soul. Sales and marketing 101, like that stuff does not resonate with my soul the way that yoga does, you know? And so having gone through both at the same time, by the time I graduated from college, I was just at this point of like, I don't want to go work for a startup. I don't want to have my own startup. I didn't see myself working for a corporation really ever. And I had just been through a couple years of owning my own business, and I kind of it was too much responsibility for a 21-year-old, to be honest. And I was like done with it. So I just wanted to study yoga. I wanted to live and breathe and practice yoga. That's all I knew that I wanted to do. And I knew I would be graduating in December 2017. So I started on Google looking for places to go. And I found the Mount Madonna Yoga Retreat Center on Google as a place that would allow people to come and stay there for months at a time and do work trade to keep the cost of being there very low. So I found this program. It was called Yoga Service and Community. They no longer offer it, but it was an incredible experience. And I get to San Francisco and head down to the Mount Madonna Center with the help of some family members that I have out in the Bay Area. It's a gorgeous yoga retreat center. Mount Madonna Center is nestled in the mountains overlooking California's Monterey Bay. And in addition to hosting private and group retreats, the 380-acre oasis of Mount Madonna Center is home to an intentional yoga community. About 70, 80 people live there year-round, and an institute of yoga and ayurveda. After I lived there for a year, I went on to get my advanced level yoga teaching certification through the Mount Madonna Institute. And their institute also teaches ayurveda. There's also a K through 12 school, so there's kind of like kindergarten, all the middle school, high school, and then all the way to a college if you wanted to major in yoga or Ayurveda. And then they also have Hanuman and Ganesh temples and so many trails. Like I said, 380 acres. So many, many trails to just explore the redwood forest. So although they don't offer the program that I went through anymore, they still offer a volunteer program that's very, very, very similar to that program. So you could go, or there's many ways to visit Mount Madonna, whether you're a yoga teacher, a musician, a gardener, some type of trades person or skilled laborer, cook, digital nomad, or just somebody seeking community or seeking a personal retreat, right? There are so many different ways to go there. I lived and worked there for about a year from 2018 to 2019. After that, I completed my advanced level yoga teacher training with them online. So that was from 2020 to 2021. And then the Mount Madonna Center itself, it's located in the rural town of Watsonville, which is about 2 hours south from San Francisco. Yoga classes there are offered to the community and guests every morning. Like I said, tons of beautiful hiking trails through the redwood forest. And there's one hiking trail in particular that is my favorite. It leads to an area called Sunset Ridge, which just has incredible, incredible sunset views framed by beautiful tall redwood trees. And it's the sunset looking out across the Monterey Bay, like down from the mountain. It was just the most magical sunset ever. And then Saturday mornings at Mount Madonna Center also hit different because there is a large community there that yoga is like their main spiritual practice. So they get together for breath work, also known as pranayama, and meditation, and yoga asanas, which are the yoga poses. And then khichdi is typically served for brunch most mornings, but especially on Saturday mornings. And if you've ever attended a yoga retreat with me, then you have definitely, most likely you've tried the khichdi that I make. Mount Madonna is where I originally learned how to prepare khichdi, which is a delicious traditional Ayurvedic dish. So if you're curious about khichdi, I'll link my recipe in the show notes. But my favorite thing about living in Mount Madonna is it was a place where the community's elders and so many various lifelong members that have come and gone over the years, they have literally built every single aspect of the center by hand. And one of my favorite things about living there and also studying there is getting to learn from the community's elders. They have built this center by hand, which means that there are unique architectural design elements like secret meditation caves that are built into unexpected places, and beautiful fountains, staircases, rock walls, all handmade, right? Statues imported from India. And then don't even get me started on the hand-built Hanuman and Ganesh temples. That hands down has to be one of my absolute favorite things on the actual property. So the stunning Vedic temple is dedicated to the Hindu deity Hanuman, who's known as the liberator of all troubles. And then there's a smaller side temple that is on the same area as the Hanuman temple, and it's dedicated to Ganesh, the Hindu god and remover of obstacles. Every single day, at both sunrise and sunset, rain or shine, a beautiful Vedic ceremony known as arati is performed at both the Ganesh and Hanuman temples. Now, arati is known as the offering of the light, and it is symbolic, offering our gratitude every morning, every evening for the light, the sun, the light of prana. Outside of the temple is a memorial dedicated to Sri Baba Hari Das, also affectionately known as Babaji, which means beloved father. And Baba Hari Das, or Babaji, is the founder and teacher of Mount Madonna Center. He lived until he was about 85 years old and actually passed away when I was living at the center. So since then, they have put up a memorial to honor him. The drive from the center to the coastal town of Santa Cruz is about 45 minutes down the mountain and through surrounding agricultural areas. Fun fact, the nearby Salinas Valley is nicknamed the salad bowl of the world because this region where the center is located is actually one of the most agriculturally productive areas in the US. And like I said, the center is in a very rural area. It's surrounded by apple orchards and vineyards. The center itself is so large that you can actually drive around it. So side note, if you are thinking about trying to go to the Mount Madonna Center for a visit, I would certainly recommend having a car there, especially for anyone with limited mobility. But the other bonus of having a car with you is that you can also tent or vehicle camp as a more affordable option to stay at the center. So if you are renting or driving, if you bring some type of vehicle out there with you, that can be beneficial for your wallet at least, right? And the center does recommend a ride service when you book a personal retreat or an event there. But in my opinion, for all the reasons I just said, renting a car is totally worth it. And you're going to want something with all-wheel drive, like an SUV. Personally, I absolutely love the drive up and down the mountain. It's gorgeous and it's fun if you're into blasting music with the windows down and zooming around super curvy, windy mountain country roads. So tell me, you guys, should I host a retreat at Mount Madonna? I also made a vlog about my experience there because I went there recently, and that is part of the end of this cycle for me. So 7 years ago is when I initially went there, and then very recently I was called to go back, as I have shared in previous episodes. So I made a vlog while I was out there a couple months ago. If you want to see it, it's on my YouTube channel, but check it out. Should I host a yoga retreat next year at Mount Madonna? Like, would you guys like to go there with me? Please comment and let me know. So let's ground this into your personal life. Even if you have no interest in going to California or specifically Mount Madonna Center, where in your life do you feel this sense of devotion? Like when I'm talking about Mount Madonna Center, even now, I just feel this sense of devotion, beauty, and love. I have so many just powerful spiritual moments and happy, potent moments in my life that took place there. So what evokes those type of devoted, excited, heart expanding feelings for you? Where do you feel devoted to a practice of some sort? It could be a spiritual practice. Where do you feel devoted to community, to joy? And what does that look like for you? Share with us in the comments. All right, you guys, moving on in the story. So I ended up living at Mount Madonna Center for a full year. I did come and go a little bit, so there are parts of the story that I'm cutting out just for the sake of time. But I wanted to focus this episode on my West Coast adventures. When I graduated from college, the world felt like my oyster. I had money saved, I had my degree, I had zero responsibilities, so I could have gone anywhere, but I chose to go to California. Why? For me, the short answer is internalized homophobia. Growing up in Ohio, I always felt like I wanted to leave here. I felt like I had to get out because I just didn't think it was safe to be myself here. And I very literally did escape when I initially went to California. I finally felt like it was safe and like I was allowed to be myself. I had some family out in the Bay Area. They were very important to my grandmother. So before my grandmother passed away in 2020, one of the last things that she did for me was make sure that I was in contact with these family members because she knew that I planned to go out to California. And so I'm very, very grateful to her for connecting me and really insisting and ensuring that that happened, because not only now that she's passed, I do strongly feel like that grandmother, my mother's mother, is my guardian angel, but I also have now these wonderful familial relationships with certain members of my family who I really do feel understand me and do accept and validate me. So it's been very, very healing for me. So thank you, Grandma, for this connection, right, with California. And I always have felt like I have had this kind of call to California. My grandpa also spent a good amount of time out there, and my grandma that I was just talking about, they both did, right? So I was living at the yoga retreat. I definitely attempted to date women around this time, both at the retreat center, which was an interesting and challenging time, and then women also outside of the yoga retreat center. But because I still hadn't fully accepted myself, I was attracting people who were inexperienced or experimental and or had mostly dated men because of compulsory heterosexuality and their own internalized homophobia. And this led them and me to both be emotionally unavailable in the same way, really. I had all this compulsory heterosexuality, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it just means there's so much social pressure put on females to be straight. By default, females are supposed to be passive sexually, right? The idea of a female initiating a romantic or sexual dynamic, it not only does it challenge patriarchy, it's like considered to be aggressive and like a turnoff and immoral, even. I fortunately was not raised with religion, but both of my parents were. And so they still had ideas around homosexuality and like what is acceptable and how girls and women should be, right? So I internalized those ideas. I just continued to date men because that was who pursued me, and I had internalized the idea that if I pursued anyone, which has been my tendency with men as well, like I tend to be the pursuer, the initiator, but I've internalized at this point the idea that that is wrong and bad, right? 21 to 23-year-old me is very much living in this shell of like, I have to be soft, I have to be feminine, I have to be like palatable and agreeable, and I have to make other people comfortable, right? 29-year-old me has grown out and shed so much of that conditioning at this point, but we're going back to the start of the 7-year cycle, you guys. So yes, dating around, all of the women that I'm attracting are emotionally unavailable because I'm emotionally unavailable because I've avoided doing certain work, or honestly, at that point, I didn't even know that I had the amount of work to do on myself. Like, I was just right at the start of my healing journey. I didn't even know that I didn't fully accept myself. Like, I thought that I did fully accept myself because I had come out in high school. It was just a lot of failed attempts and emotionally shallow situations and a lot of unrequited feelings that eventually led me to believe, like, okay, I came to California so that it would be okay to be gay, but like, where are all the gay people? Like, I'm on dating apps, I'm putting myself out there, but like, I don't even see them walking around. It's like I'm invisible. It's like they're invisible. Like, at this point, the way I expressed my appearance, I would get very frustrated because people would look at me and be like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed like you're gay or you're queer or whatever, like based on your appearance. I was very straight passing, and that was frustrating for me. And I didn't even understand why, because at that point, I also didn't know that I was non binary. So I was like, why am I so annoyed that people perceive me as a straight woman? Oh, sweet summer child. So during this time, when I was living at Mount Madonna Center, I did take a few road trips through Southern California. I loved to drive up and down the one because I loved driving through Big Sur, such a beautiful stretch of Highway 1 right in the central coastline of California. And my teacher, Swami Shankarananda, had opened an ashram in Sedona, Arizona, which was, I believe, like a 14-hour drive from where I was staying at the Mount Madonna Center. And I drove a few times from there to go stay at the ashram and be with my teacher there. And the travel back and forth in my shitty Honda Accord that had like 192,000 miles on it when I got it. Those moments of solo travel were some of the most profound and potent moments of soul growth for me because I was completely alone. I was completely relying on myself. There's a stretch from like Los Angeles over to Phoenix area, like southern Arizona area, that you will lose cell signal, and it's like 100 miles of just driving through straight desert, and there are signs on the side of the highway that say nothing for 100 miles. Like, this is the last gas station, and then it's 100 miles of desert, baby, and no cell signal either. So if you break down, if your shitty Honda Accord with almost 200,000 miles on it breaks down, you're on your own, honey, in the desert. So enjoy. And one of the times that I drove over there, because it was a 14-hour drive, it was either car camp just on the side of the highway or pay for a hotel or an Airbnb. And I was even broker then than I am now. So I did not want to pay for an Airbnb or a hotel, especially not for one night, just for like a couple hours, right? So I definitely was very brave, and I pulled off the side of the road somewhere in Southern California in the desert. It was maybe around Joshua Tree, Palm Springs area, and I straight up pulled into someone's yard, basically, as much as you can have a yard in the desert. And I just slept there in my car overnight. Like, even looking back on that, I'm like, wow, that was so brave of me. That was so scary. And it was scary because I was completely alone. Where I slept that night, thankfully, did have cell signal. But I'm just sharing this to say these experiences, especially going through them alone and just having to completely rely on myself, are such powerful spiritual experiences and just so eye-opening and character building because I'm not actually relying on myself, right? I'm relying on spirit. I'm relying on the divine. Like, the divine has my back, and trusting that can be very scary and very difficult at first. Now looking back, I have so much more trust from these experiences. That was when I really started to just completely follow my intuition and just listen to my intuition more and more and more. And that's part of what makes this time period so magical. And I still remember waking up in the desert, seeing the sunrise over the mountains in the distance, and getting into the front seat of my car and driving away and feeling so free. After I lived at the Mount Madonna Center for about a year, I had had enough. Some things about living there made me feel like I was living with my parents still, or my grandparents, and I was ready to be independent. So I moved down into the town of Santa Cruz and moved in with an elder queer for the summer. She was a DJ and really into ketamine and gave me a huge discount on a room in her condo because I was also a vegetarian lesbian. And I almost had a girlfriend during that summer. The girl I had been seeing is part of why I had the bravery to move into town, because I didn't know anyone in California except for my family 2 hours away in the Bay Area who are super busy. And then everybody lived at the yoga retreat center, which is super sequestered. I almost had a girlfriend until she went to Burning Man and hooked up with some dude. In all fairness, though, I also went to a festival at the same time and I also hooked up with some dude. The struggle. My attempts to embrace lesbianism definitely did not prevent copious amounts of 30-something men from hitting on, preying on me. Mind you, I was 21 to 23 in all of these stories, and older men absolutely love women and girls in that age range. So often at my job as a barista, when I lived in town that summer, this would happen. And so I met this guy one day, and he just starts chatting with me and says, "Hey, I'm going to Bhakti Fest for free on a press pass. My friend got me in. I can get you in too for free if you want to join me." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." I had been thinking about quitting my job anyway because I wanted to go do some more road tripping and some more traveling. And I was like, well, I'm pretty much just working here so that I can afford to pay rent. And a lot of people on the West Coast just live in their cars. So why not just try that for a while and live in my car? 22-year-old me was like, woo, yeah, I kind of want to quit my job. I kind of want to just travel anyway. There's this epic yoga festival happening in Joshua Tree, and this guy's offering me tickets to go for free. And he's gonna drive, so why wouldn't I do that? Oh my goodness. Again, sweet summer child. But it ended up being a good time. My intuition had clocked this guy as being maybe a little weird, but a good guy. He had a friend who was not as great, but they were tolerable, right? And the skills of a young 20-something female to tolerate older men, I think that's why those guys seem to enjoy younger women, not the women that are actually their age, because they can't pull an appropriate age girlfriend. But I'm living life. I'm using my cuteness to go to a yoga festival for free. The one guy told me he was celibate, so I was like, okay, I think we're good. And my girlfriend, or who I thought was my girlfriend, just told me she didn't want a relationship. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. Here we go. Just let's go. I quit my job. I had only been baristaing at that shop for like 3 months. Again, packed up everything into my shitty Honda Accord and got in this car with this guy and his friend, and we drove the 8 hours south from Santa Cruz to Joshua Tree, which is a little south of LA. And the festival ended up being absolutely amazing. I didn't pay a dime to go there. This guy covered everything. It was a completely chill time. And I got to just vibe mostly by myself and listen to good music and just enjoy being at this beautiful yoga festival in Joshua Tree. And I took yoga classes, and Mike Love, a reggae musician that I really like, played a set. So I got to vibe and listen and sing to Mike Love under the stars in Joshua Tree. My favorite part about this memory, though, actually happens after the festival. So we're vibing. We only made it to the festival. I think it goes a whole week, but we only made it for, I think, like the weekend. So just a few days. And the guy that I had met who took me down there, he, like I said, he's a chill guy. He was very like social butterfly type. So of course he's making friends and ends up making friends with our camping neighbor, who is a medicine woman, traveling shaman lady who serves bufo, which is a type of 5-MeO DMT that comes from a Amazonian tree frog. So after the festival ends, I didn't have anywhere to go. At this point, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. And so this dude asks me, hey, I just made friends with these ladies. The one was a combo facilitator and photographer, and the other is a bufo facilitator and shaman medicine woman facilitator. And he was like, they're asking us if we want to go camp and they're going to serve us some medicine. And I had never tried anything like that before. So I was like, heck yes. And we went out and found a camping space in Joshua Tree National Park. It was absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend camping there if you ever get an opportunity. And I truly believe the reason my intuition called me to go and have that experience was for me to meet those women, the 2 medicine women. And we camped together for a couple nights. We got to actually know each other. Again, everything was provided, food, everything. I didn't spend a dime. And while these women would typically charge for a ceremony like that, they were offering it to us completely for free. And so I received this bufo, this 5-MeO DMT in ceremony. It was such a beautiful experience with them. And I essentially got to see a glimpse of what I would like my life to be like through these women, because they weren't traveling with any men. They were completely on their own, like strong, independent, educated business owners, kind-hearted, and they really just showed me love, and I'm still in touch with them to this day. But I think the purpose of me following my intuition was just have that experience. It's one of the most free and liberating moments in my entire life to this day. And then also to meet those two women and see essentially a model for something that I could aspire toward, right? I had never seen anybody living their life that way, being nomadic full time. And to tie all of this back with yoga philosophy, part of the yamas and niyamas, which are yoga's ethical tenets for living, is the concept of aparigraha, or non-attachment. So during this phase of my life, I really learned aparigraha. I really had to pick and choose. This part of my life where I was kind of nomadic extended for about like 3 to 4, I'll say like 4-ish years in total, where I was semi-nomadic, kind of moving around all the time. And it was such a beautiful part of my life because of this non-grasping, non-hoarding, non-attachment. Like I had to travel light. When you travel light through this world, you realize very quickly that all of the things that you think you need, I would say probably about 80%, maybe even 90% of the things that I think I need, like as I look around in my apartment right now, like, oh, if I had to get rid of things, probably about 80 to 90% of it I don't truly need. So traveling, living nomadically like this taught me to let things go. And because I was constantly releasing attachment to material things, to money, I was also constantly receiving. And I was essentially homeless for like years, months and months, right? I had places where I was doing work trade that were kind of my home base, but those situations were very temporary. So I was essentially nomadic, or at points, almost certainly homeless, like not knowing where I would sleep that night. And it was during this time period that I completely just opened my heart to the divine, to allow myself to be guided by intuition and to trust my higher self and my intuition, to trust the divine that I would be provided for. There were literally nights where I wouldn't know where I'd be going the next day. I wouldn't know where I would be sleeping that night. Like I'd have to figure it out that day. I'd have to figure out how I would get food that day from like random free boxes around town because I was penniless. And it was such a freeing feeling. Now, I want to check my privilege and acknowledge, like, I was choosing to do this. I didn't have to. I was choosing this level of extreme freedom, houselessness. I recognize that it is not a choice for everyone. This was a spiritual practice for me. It showed me what I truly need and what I can let go. And that letting go is imperative in order to attract in new energy. And we're constantly co-creating with the energies of life. So to bring this into your experience, I invite you to reflect, what does the open road awaken in you? Think of a time that you've been on a road trip, or maybe figuratively, a time where you had a fork in the road of your life. And one of the options was to go into the unknown. Did that awaken freedom for you, or fear? Like, what does this uncertainty or unknown, what does this open road, literal or figurative, awaken in you? Freedom, fear, or both? Let us know in the comments. All right, you guys, so let's talk about this larger 7-year cycle that has certainly been ending for me, but I feel it ending for the collective as well. I have skipped over a lot. Obviously, there's been a lot of things that have happened between then and now that I can't mention for the sake of time. Like, I went to Guatemala for the first time in 2020. I went back to California. I did another road trip across the country and back. I went to Jamaica, Mexico, India, like so many things. On a collective level, I've also noticed over the past 7 years that there are patterns showing up in terms of personal identity and queerness. Certainly in the last 7 years or so, there has been a lot more openness and acceptance for queer identity, but we've also kind of taken 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, right? And then in terms of a spiritual awakening in the collective, I think the past 7 years has brought a lot of spiritual awakening, intensity, and depth. And part of that awakening of the collective is why we are at such a tense point in history right now. And because we have these very, very strong feelings of people becoming awakened and shifting into higher vibrations that are contrasting more and more with the group of people that still are stuck in the old ways and still not wanting to adapt and evolve and grow and be inclusive. Like, as this one group has to increase its frequency and grow and evolve more in love, it's just creating more and more and more light to cast a bigger and bigger shadow onto the group that then has to cling harder and harder to the past and the status quo and outdated ideas of power and worthiness and what love should look like. So this is a huge collective 7-year cycle that we have been ending. And I'll talk about it more in the next episode because we get an astrology deep dive. But just to say where this is coming from astrologically in this episode, it has to do with Saturn's cycle and movement from the sign of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac, into the sign of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. This is a cycle that happens every 30 years or so. And we had that total solar eclipse in August in 2017 and another one in April of 2024 that's kind of astrologically bookmarking each side of this 7-year period. So the 7-year Saturn cycle in astrology is a concept where we see significant life developments and changes that occur in approximate 7-year intervals. And this can be applied collectively. It can also be applied personally. For example, think of a child from age 0 to 7. That is one developmental phase of life. And then from age 8 to 14 is another developmental phase. 15 to 21 is another developmental phase. 22 to 28 is another. And then around age 28 to 30 is when we hit our first major Saturn return, because Saturn has gone through all 12 zodiac signs and returned to the zodiac sign where it is placed in our birth chart. So that 28 to 30 year cycle can be divided into 4 segments of about 7.5 years or so. And this pattern that we see is triggered by Saturn, which is the planet of lessons, challenges, and responsibility, making major aspects to its placement that is in your birth chart every 7 years as it moves around your birth chart, making its way back to its original position, which is your Saturn return. And these periods are seen as cosmic review moments. It's a time to encourage a person to address their life path and commitments seriously before the more significant Saturn returns occur. So, like I said, the first major Saturn return is from age 28 to 30, but it does happen about every 30 years throughout the life. So another Saturn return would happen at age 58 to 60, and a third Saturn return, should someone live that long, is going to occur between ages 88 and 90. Saturn is the planet that's associated with discipline and structure. So we can use these Saturn 7-year cycles like a performance review to hold ourselves accountable and see what progress we've made over the past 7-year cycle. This is important in order to make sure that we're taking certain important aspects of our dharma or our life path seriously. To take it back to the analogy of the child from age 0 to 7, a child is at a foundational point for new experiences and growth, like starting school. And then that second time frame, age 8 to 14, is a period of questioning authority. Think of teenagers potentially challenging relationships and the structures that you grow up with. By age 21, we're marking a phase of life on our own, leaving the guidance of parents and caretakers and taking on our own greater independence, right? And then age 28 to 30 is that first major Saturn return when Saturn returns to its original birth position. So for me, my Saturn is in Aries, and Saturn has been going back and forth between the signs of Pisces and Aries. It will continue retrograding in the sign of Pisces until the end of November, and then it will move firmly into the sign of Aries. And so this collective and maybe personal shift that we are feeling, it's happening in spurts, right? As we're retrograding, we're dipping our toe into this energy and then coming back and relearning and re-going over and fixing certain things and then coming back. And then we just repeat the cycle until the lessons are integrated and we have fully moved into this Saturn and Aries energy. So the main Saturn return at 28 to 30, this is marking a significant transition into adulthood and a deep re-evaluation of your life path up until that point. To bring this back to our queer practice and to your own life journey, liberation and the practice of pursuing freedom, it's cyclical. Healing is cyclical, not linear. And astrology shows us that because we have each planet giving us some type of cycle, and then the retrogrades giving us those windows of time for integration. So healing is cyclical, not linear. This means we might come back to the same lesson many, many times, but we are different. The lesson is the same, but we are different. When I went back to Mount Madonna a couple months ago, I am a completely different person at age 29 than when I first showed up there at age 21. And so it was the same situation, but I was different, so I saw it from a completely different perspective. And I've healed and I've grown and changed and evolved so much since then. And it completely changed how I perceive the situation. So where do you see this in your own life? Now, if it's safe, we'll do a mini practice together. If you're in a situation where you're not safe to close your eyes, then keep your eyes open, of course. But if you're in a place where you're able to take a pause, take a break for a few minutes, maybe close down your eyes and just focus on your breathing. We'll take a full breath in and let it out. Let's take a breath in together for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last time, inhale 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Return to your natural breath. Noticing that the exhale must end in order for the inhale to begin. And the inhale must end in order for the exhale to begin. Now in this intentional space of calmness, maybe keeping the eyes closed, envision or feel yourself standing at a crossroads. Maybe you're in Joshua Tree in the desert. There's beautiful boulders and mountains in the distance, and the sun is out. It's shining, and there are Joshua trees all around. And on one hand, you see one path. On the other hand, you see another path, another choice for you. And which path will you choose? Is it the path that leads to an unknown destination? Let's say an affirmation together. Breathing in. I trust the cycles of my life. I trust the cycles of my life. I trust higher guidance and my unique spiritual journey. I trust higher guidance and my unique spiritual journey. I trust the cycles of my life, higher guidance, and my unique spiritual journey. I trust the cycles of my life, higher guidance, and my unique spiritual journey. This month, I'd like to offer a journaling prompt for you guys to write about what cycle is closing for you. Did the 7-year cycle or anything else that I mentioned in this episode resonate for you? And if so, what are you leaving behind? What are you stepping into with devotion? What are you creating space for in your life? And what limiting beliefs are you no longer allowing to define you? So, to summarize, today I shared powerful moments in my life and travel stories from California, the West Coast, going to Bhakti Fest, and exploring road trips as a spiritual practice. And I reflected on the ending of a huge 7-year cycle for myself personally, and likely for the collective as well. We did a deep dive into my experience living at the Mount Madonna Yoga Retreat Center for a year and the West Coast adventures that followed my decision to leave from the Mount Madonna Center. And lastly, we explained how Saturn's 7-year cycles might affect you personally, highlighting important thresholds for your personal growth throughout the years. If you found this episode interesting, entertaining, or insightful, please share it with a queer or spiritual friend. It really helps. And don't forget to download your free self-care resource guide by signing up for my email newsletter on my website at yourloved.one/pod. And witches, if you're seeking some community this fall, the Wild Witchy Women's Yoga Retreat is happening October 3rd through the 5th. That is so soon, you guys, in the Kent area of Northeast Ohio. And we do have a few seats left. So this retreat is going to be a magical space of embodiment, ritual, and community with like-minded women. If you would like to join us, the link to apply is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, you guys. And until next time, let's stay connected and stay witchy. I'll talk to you soon, and blessed be. With all my love, Lee Davy.